Hello and welcome to World News Program, streaming to you live on all 24 News. I'm your host, Krinfa Zachary, and up next are the headlines. 4 Zionist massacres leave 38 Palestinians dead and 71 injured in Gaza. Targets include الإشهارية, الزهراء City, Rafah, and Khan Yunis. Also coming up, occupation forces withdraw from Khan Yunis ahead of Rafah operation. Palestinian doubt looms over intentions, and the resistance warns of retaliation, while World Health Organization urges protection of health facilities in Gaza. Also ahead, over 600 Zionist attacks on health facilities since October 7th. Humanitarian crisis deepens with over 40,000 Palestinians dead or missing. And the UN warns half of Gaza's population is at the brink of famine. And Zionist raids hit central Bekaa and Baalbek in Lebanon. Iran designates entities' embassies as military targets after Damascus consulate bombing. And Houthis target Zionist, British, and American ships in the Red Sea. Stay tuned, we've got all the details right after the break. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off, in our topical news, Zionist forces killed 38 Palestinians and injured 71 others in 4 new massacres in Gaza. The tale of the aggression tops 33,175 martyrs and 75,886 injured since October 7th. Tragically, the true extent of the devastation remains unclear as many victims remain trapped under rubble or stranded on roads inaccessible to ambulance and civil defense crews. Five Palestinians, including 3 children and 2 women, were killed with 10 others injured when Zionist occupation aircraft bombed a house in the Shujaia neighborhood, east of Gaza City. The Palestinian news agency, citing medical sources, confirmed the devastating toll. Zionist warplanes carried out airstrikes on homes in Rafah's Al Junaina neighborhood, resulting in many Palestinian casualties. In the southern Gaza Strip, 2 Palestinians were injured near a bombed house by the Istiqama Mosque. Additionally, large areas in Beit Hanun were targeted along with artillery shelling in Zaytun, southern neighborhoods of Gaza City. In Zahra City, central Gaza, 3 Palestinians were martyred and several others wounded in another Zionist bombing incident targeting civilians. Still, this time in Khan Yunis, Gaza South, Zionist forces launched airstrikes and artillery attacks on Sunday. The assaults targeted areas like Zina and Bani Suhaila, leading to many casualties. Throughout the night and into Sunday, airstrikes continued, hitting areas west of Khan Yunis. Additionally, artillery strikes affected large parts of the city's south and west. It was a day of tragedy and destruction for Khan Yunis and its residents. After Zionist forces withdrew from southern Gaza, Khan Yunis residents returned to find their city in ruins. Meanwhile, much-needed aid finally reached shelter centers in Deir el-Balah after 2 months, providing relief to displaced families facing severe shortages of basic necessities. Here's Salman Asad.
6 months into the war in Gaza, the human cost has been devastating, with more than 33,000 people have been killed and 75,000 injured, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, which does not distinguish between civilians and combatants and say the majority of the dead are women and children. Here in Khan Younis, where much of the city has been destroyed, buildings bombed, overturned cars stuck in a mud near craters left by missiles.
I miss it. I miss my town. I miss Khan Younis. My soul is here, but my body was not. But my soul is here. I will put the pergola on my destroyed house, even if they destroy all of Khan Younis. We will stay here and we are steadfast.
In a situation such as the one unfolding in the Gaza Strip, with millions of civilians facing critical shortages of food, fuel, and medicines, aid agency staff are precious frontline workers. Here in Deir el-Balah, large quantities of aid arrived at schools and shelter centers for displaced people facing a severe shortage of basic foodstuffs.
During the past 2 months, there was a severe scarcity of food supplies and we could not get anything, and people suffered due to the lack of food supplies. Because of this, many children suffered from malnutrition, and as a result of crowding, there were respiratory and health problems, such as hepatitis. All of these things are a result of crowding in the center. This crowding comes from a large amount of people who left their houses due to the war.
North Gaza already meets famine criteria with more than 200 people there under the worst possible conditions, forcing most of the 2.3 million population from their homes and now depend on aid for survival. And according to the World Food Programme, a ceasefire remains the only way for aid agencies to roll out a massive relief operation, reaching all the communities in need.
Most of the Zionist occupation's ground forces withdrew from southern Gaza, leaving only 1 battalion. This move followed a significant operation by Palestinian resistance forces on Saturday, resulting in casualties. While the occupation claimed withdrawal from Khan Younis after months of genocidal war, skepticism remains about their true intentions, especially with ongoing restrictions on aid crossings into Gaza. Al-Qassam Brigade's Hamas's military wing issued a stark warning to the Zionist occupation forces entering Gaza. In a newly released video on their Telegram channel, they vowed to confront the invaders, declaring that while they may enter Gaza streets, they will face scorching resistance and its allies. The World Health Organization has stated that the Shifa medical complex in Gaza will not reopen following its transformation into a mere shell filled with bodies. Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus condemned the massive destruction inflicted upon the hospital, emphasizing that it was besieged, bombed, and ultimately obliterated by the Zionist occupation forces.
The World Health Organization mission was able to enter a Shifa medical hospital on Friday, and team members saw at least 5 bodies during the mission. They also noted that the majority of the buildings of the hospital complex were severely damaged or reduced to ashes, as it appears impossible to restore even the bare minimum. In the short term, an in-depth technical assessment is needed to determine whether the remaining buildings are safe for future use.
The Director General of the World Health Organization has further issued a call for the protection of the remaining health facilities in Gaza.
The remaining health facilities in Gaza must be protected, and health and humanitarian workers must be protected. And I demand unimpeded humanitarian access to the Strip and a ceasefire.
The Central Bureau of Statistics in Palestine reported over 600 attacks on health facilities in Gaza and the West Bank since October 7th, with 489 medical staff members martyred and 600 injured. As a result, 26 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza have ceased operations, alongside 76% of the primary health center or care centers. This has left remaining hospitals operating at over 359% capacity, leaving around 350,000 patients with chronic diseases without essential care. Over 6 months, Zionist forces killed nearly 40,000 Palestinians, mostly women and children, in about 3,000 massacres. The attacks aimed to destroy Gaza's infrastructure and health system, part of a plan to displace Palestinians and create what they call a new Nakba. Here's Zahra Farjani with the report.
During 6 months of Zionist aggression on the Gaza Strip, the occupation army committed nearly 3,000 massacres, resulting in 39,975 martyrs and lost individuals. This toll is expected to rise as the entity continues its planned genocide and forced displacement of the besieged Gaza population. According to the government media office, the total number of Gaza martyrs included 14,500 children, 9,560 women, 484 medical personnel, 65 civil defense members, and 140 journalists. Data also revealed that 73% of the total injuries were among children and women out of over 75,815 injuries since the start of the aggression, not to mention over 43,000 registered orphans. Moreover, the criminal entity deliberately destroyed the healthcare system in Gaza by putting 32 hospitals and 53 health centers out of service, targeting 159 healthcare facilities and bombing 126 ambulances. Civilian homes were not spared from Zionist airstrikes, with 70,000 housing units completely destroyed and 290,000 units partially damaged, leading to the displacement of over 1 million Palestinians. The government media office report in Gaza highlighted the total destruction of 171 government buildings, 100 schools and universities completely, and partial damage to 305 others. The Zionist war against Gaza has also targeted houses of worship, destroying 229 mosques and damaging 297 others partially, in addition to the destruction of 3 churches. The destruction of essential services has further compounded the suffering of the Palestinian population in Gaza. The ongoing Zionist violence has caused widespread devastation, highlighting the urgent need for international intervention.
In the same context, the continuous Zionist aggression on Gaza since October 7th has inflicted unspeakable humanitarian tragedies marked by widespread killing, destruction, starvation, and displacement. Here's Osama Ayadi with more details.
7 months into the war in Gaza, and Palestinians still bear the brunt of a genocidal war and daily massacres perpetrated by the Zionist entity's forces. Almost 40,000 people, most of whom women and children, have been brutally killed.
This event has been occurring for more than 6 months. Every day, children become martyrs, and the unjust international community remains indifferent to these scenes and to the killing of the innocent, defenseless children who have nothing to do with this. Every day, more children and women are killed. What type of a crime and injustice is this? Enough!
Turning over 50% of the infrastructure in Gaza into piles of rubble, the Zionist forces continue their relentless onslaught on unarmed civilians, while 500,000 of people have been squeezed in the southern region of Rafah, facing daily bombardment and ground assaults.
For 6 months, almost, we come to the hospital and pray upon thousands of martyrs, martyr after martyr. We ask God that they be among the best martyrs. What befell the martyrs befalls us. And praise be to God, I lost from my family 36 martyrs who were martyred and killed, among them my children, my mother, my sister, and her children, my uncle, and my cousins.
Unprecedented war crimes and violation of humanitarian laws and conventions are all what reflects the Zionist presence in the Gaza Strip. Even long-serving UN humanitarian officials have described what they saw in Gaza as never seen before. The Zionist military campaign has been exceptional in its indiscriminate brutality, as many leaders around the world affirm that there is no safe place left for Palestinians across the Strip. Even after the retreat of some Zionist forces from minor regions of the Strip, Palestinians found no stone unturned, only piles of rubble and dead bodies trapped beneath.
It's a shock. A shock what happened was not small. While coming on the way, in the car, I saw things. The destruction is unbearable. I'm going to my house and I know that it's destroyed. I'm going to remove the rubble to get a shirt off.
From the rate and scale of civilian slaughter to the killing of protected groups and the type of munitions, the Zionist war on Gaza is an exceptionally brutal campaign, unlike almost anything the world witnessed in modern history.
And in another story, the United Nations warns that as the Zionist aggression against Gaza enters its 7th month, half of the Strip's population faces the imminent threat of famine. The UN humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territories described the situation as catastrophic, emphasizing unprecedented levels of malnutrition among Gaza's children. Meanwhile, Amnesty International reiterated its demand on Sunday for the opening of more routes to facilitate aid delivery to the Gaza Strip. In a statement, the organization described the occupation's temporary agreement to allow humanitarian aid as necessary, but ultimately inadequate. Algeria is stepping up efforts at the UN Security Council to end the Gaza conflict and hold the Zionist entity accountable for the crimes they committed against Palestinians, part of a broader global push for international legal action. Sofian Kantouri reports.
The genocide in Gaza has now entered its 6th month, and as it has always done, Algeria remains steadfast in its support for the Palestinian cause, aligning with various international bodies. Algeria continues to exert all its forces, a commitment that reflects President Abdelmadjid Tebboun's directives, leading Algeria back to the Security Council to bolster efforts for Palestine. President Tebboune has repeatedly confirmed that the state of Palestine must take its rightful place as a full sovereign member of the United Nations.
المعركة اللي أنا قائمة بها الجزائر وأنا باسم الجزائر باسم الجزائريات والجزائريين لما أخذت الكلمة في الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة قلت آن الأوان أن فلسطين تصبح عضو كامل الحقوق وكامل العضوية في الأمم المتحدة ولو محتلة.
Vous croyez à l'aboutissement de ce combat?
J'en suis sûr.
Que le combat aboutira.
وفلسطين تكون عضو دائم في الأمم المتحدة. وما نتركش ميدان المعركة حتى نوصل للنتيجة هذه إن شاء الله. حب من حب وكره من كره. احنا هذا مبدأنا. بغض النظر على واش يقول فلان ولا فلتان فلسطين تدخل كعضو كامل في الأمم المتحدة. احنا دخلناها كعضو ملاحظ. جاء الوقت اليوم باش ندخلوها كعضو كامل.
Aware of the scale of the crimes perpetrated by the Zionist entity against Palestinian civilians, Algeria, who was also the instigator last February of a draft resolution at the Security Council, called for an immediate action to put an end to this tragedy. Algeria's plea was and still carried by a deep belief in justice and the universal values of human rights.
I would like to thank all the Council members for their flexibility and the constructive way that allowed us today to adopt this long-awaited resolution. A resolution that calls for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in order to put an end to the massacres that unfortunately are still ongoing over the past 5 months.
Algeria's diplomatic leadership stands out amidst regional disparities, with some Arab nations failing to prioritize the Palestinian cause. Despite challenges, Algeria maintains unwavering solidarity with Palestine, embodying both moral and political courage. This stance echoes Algeria's historical commitment to just causes, rooted in principles of anti-colonial struggle.
Welcome back to the rest of the program. And in other news, on Sunday, the Zionist occupation launched airstrikes on central Bekaa and Baalbek in eastern Lebanon. Local reports say raids hit Shawra area, an empty warehouse in As-Safari, causing fires. Lebanese Hezbollah retaliated with about 40 missiles from southern Lebanon, targeting Zionist sites in northern occupied Palestinian territories and the Syrian Golan Heights. Still in the Middle East, on Sunday, Yahya Rahim Safavi, advisor to the Iranian supreme leader, issued a warning to the Zionist entity threatening to designate occupation embassies as potential military targets. He declared that no occupation embassy was safe, leading to the closure of representations in 27 countries amidst ongoing Iranian threats following Zionist bombing of its consulate in Damascus. Meanwhile, the Iranian Esna news agency published names and images of 9 missiles capable of reaching and targeting the Zionist entity, with ranges spanning from 1,400 to 2,500 kilometers. Moving on, in other news, Algeria has underscored the importance of learning from Rwanda's tragic past during a ceremony commemorating the 30th anniversary of the 1994 genocide in Kigali. Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf reaffirmed Algeria's unwavering solidarity with Rwanda, reflecting on the nation's resilience after the devastating events. The ceremony, attended by dignitaries from across Africa, served as a stark reminder of the need to prevent such atrocities and respond to the cries of the oppressed. Rwandan President Paul Kagame criticized the international community's failure during the Tutsi genocide anniversary. He described the journey as long and arduous, with lessons learned through bloodshed. Islam Sid has more.
Rwandans came together in a moving ceremony to remember more than 1 million people killed in the Rwandan genocide 30 years ago. This dark chapter in history witnessed Tutsis and moderate Hutus systematically killed by Hutu extremists over 100 days, starting from April 7, 1994. The roots of this atrocity lie in the colonial era, when German and subsequently Belgian rule deepened ethnic divisions between the Tutsi minority and the Hutu majority. Led by President Paul Kagame and joined by leaders and top officials, including Algerian Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf, the Rwandan president lit the genocide flame of hope as a commemoration of the massacre. Speaking at the BK Arena during a commemoration ceremony, President Kagame praised African nations for their support and criticized Western countries for their inaction during the genocide.
Many of the countries represented here today also sent their sons and daughters to serve as peacekeepers in Rwanda. Those soldiers did not fail Rwanda. It was the international community which failed all of us, whether from contempt or cowardice.
The commemoration in Kigali symbolized a quest for healing and justice, Yet the trauma persists, with many young Rwandans still grappling with their identity because of being born just before or during the genocide amid reconciliation efforts.
For us, we were a child, a baby. We could not manage to remember what was happening. Just what we know is what we founded in the orphans where we were. Because those soldiers who brought us from dead bodies taken to orphans, before they receive you, they recorded. So that is where I founded, as personally, my story, that I have been in the dead bodies and the soldiers took me to orphans.
I think it's the responsibility of the international community that this should never happen again. And we have a classical example of a country that at the time was seen to be of no strategic importance when the lives of so many people were at stake.
The genocide was ignited by the assassination of then-President Juvenal Habyarimana, leading to a brutal rampage that claimed thousands of lives daily. The conflict ended in July 1994, with the Rwandan Patriotic Front seizing control. Today, as Rwanda reflects on this painful history, the pursuit of peace and understanding remains paramount.
The end of our program. Thank you for watching and have a good one.